We've heard the same rancor off and on over the years. This is a story that goes through cycles around products, particularly iPhone. And I think, the key narrative here for us, and I think what Tim Cook was trying to express, is this is really an ecosystem story. And that still has the opportunity to drive, opportunities, as we look forward. And I think one of the key numbers, and this was an update from the release last week, is that they're up to close to 1.4 billion active devices. And I think the key opportunity for the company is to build new revenue streams off of that active, engaged customer base.
Well, but let's talk about that. The revenue from devices themselves versus the services revenue that they seem to be trying to move into. First of all, people are owning their phones for much longer. By the way, I have the new phone, and I'm a power user. They just upgraded or forced me to upgrade my iCloud service from $2.99 a month to $9.99 a month.
Whoa,
now
really?
I'm now in with them for $120 a year. And by the way,
99 cents.
Couldn't even back up the thing until I was willing to say yes, I'll take the upgrade. Pictures for the last decade or whatever we've got in I had the whole family plan or whatever it is.
So that's for a bunch of phones, not just yours.
$9.99.
99. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
$9.99 a month. But that's
really doing something.
And by the way, that's high margin. That's people talk about this being a high margin product.
Yeah, the services.
That's really high margin revenue, right, Will?
Right. No. Well, that's exactly right. I think I'm still at $2.99. I may have to check my bill on that. But look, I mean, the key there is making sure the customers remain happy, right? So if you become dissatisfied with that, then that's a problem. But you've got to ensure you're getting the proper value for it.
If you don't want to lose your photos from the last 10 years, they got you.
Well, let me ask you a separate question. There was a piece of news, I feel like it got underreported or missed in all of this. It just happened this week with Samsung, where Apple on its Apple TV, which used to be the device, the little box you get, now made a deal with Samsung, so Apple TV will be on Samsung TVs. How much of that, though, is a acknowledgement that to actually build the services business, they're going to have to go effectively off-platform or start to put their platform, their system on other hardware?
Well, I think that's an important point, Andrew. That they do seem to be broadening, some of the partnership willingness, I guess, if you will. And they've had a bigger presence at CES this year than I think they probably have maybe ever. And part of that's come back to partnering with some of the TV providers. And actually, candidly, I think that may feed into ultimately one of the services opportunity around, video content,
right.
Making sure their video can be, viewed on multiple devices, whatever you want to use beyond just your core, Apple device. So I do think it speaks to, them looking at the broader opportunity for services.
But what about the slowing sales, or at least slowing growth of the sales of the phones themselves? This is always, I'm holding them in my hand, what's always been the highest margin product that's actually kept this whole thing going. If I'm going to hold on to this phone for 3 years instead of 2, is that the issue, or is China the issue, or do you really believe it's a combination of all these things?
Well, I think it's probably a combination of those things. But look, Andrew, when I step back and I look at the strength of the ecosystem, and I hear the naysayers talking about, is this the new Nokia, the new BlackBerry? I covered those, back in the day. And at the time, when the first iPhone came out, 12 years ago, Android on top of that, these were game changers in terms of being software-driven, app-driven, et cetera. I don't see anything competitively on the horizon that gives me that kind of pause. If there's something else that's more revolutionary that's going to displace Apple out there. So, yes, the upgrade cycle is slowed, and we've been seeing that. But our view is there's still an annuity there. You're still going to go to an iPhone. There's really not a better alternative out there. And so you're going to have these, potholes in the road, I think, from time to time, depending on the cycle. But, we think there's still an annuity stream around iPhone. And, of course, as we've already discussed, you've got services growing 28% to help, offset that, and ideally more than offset that at some point.
Right.
So, well, Jason Chenard here. So in terms of what would benefit shareholders at this point, given the amount of cash that Apple has, I mean, are there any discussions? I still find it hard to believe that the stock trades at 12 times earnings, and at a peak might trade at 14 times earnings. Is there any talk about share repurchases or increasing the dividend or a special dividend or anything along those lines that might give long-term holders of the stock a little bit more comfort?
Well, as you may know, I think they exited this past quarter with close to $130 billion of net cash, or close to $25 a share, and it has been their stated intention to get to a a net cash, zero position over the next, couple of years. And so I think it's very much the intention to continue to buy back stock, very possibly increase the dividend. I don't think they have any plans for a special dividend. I think the other big question has been M&A. Could they use that, in the M&A front? And of course, that has not really been, part of their DNA. So I think it's going to be, probably much of the same on that front.
Two real quick questions, Will. I'm also a watch owner. I wear the watch. I'm all kitted out here. But the question on the watch, and Tim Cook has been very aggressive and feels, I think, very ambitious about what this watch ultimately could be. How big a driver of the growth do you think this watch could be when it comes to this EKG stuff, falling down? Do older people start buying these watches in a different way?
Well, I think you're already seeing that, Andrew. I mean, you look at the fact that, the wearable sales are up 50%. Tim Cook alluded to this in his comments with Jim Cramer last night, that, they're already ahead of where, iPod was. And I thought one of the most interesting comments from him last night was, when you look back, some years from now at Apple and how you think about it, he thinks people are going to look at it as a healthcare company. And I think the watch, is part of that, and perhaps, the tip of the spear, so to speak, in terms of, future healthcare opportunities.